Hey everybody, this is Valerie Bono from Proactive, and you're listening to the Building Bite podcast. Today's episode spotlights Tricia Kagerer, Executive Vice President at Jordan Foster Construction, author of The B Words, 13 Words Women Must Navigate for Success, and TEDx Speaker. Today's topic is the importance of communication from Jobsite Risk Mitigation to navigating the C-suite as a woman. For more information on this episode and others, check out The Building Bite at buildwithproactive.com. Welcome to the Building Bite podcast, a podcast for construction contractors, owners, and insurance professionals, where you can hear from experts on key topics to help you be successful. I'm Valerie Bono, one of the show's host and head of marketing and communications at Proactive, and today we are taking a bite out of women and leadership with a focus on mitigating risk for insureds. I am here with my co-host, Mike Diercksen, Senior Consultant of Innovation and Content Solutions at Proactive, and our guest, Tricia Kagerer, Executive Vice President of Risk Management at Jordan Foster Construction, and author of the book, The B Words. Tricia, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a pleasure. Mike, how about you?
Doing great, Valerie. It's always great talking to Tricia and really looking forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, Tricia, thank you so much for joining us this morning. For our listeners, today's topic is the importance of communication from job site risk mitigation to navigating the C-suite as a woman. I had the privilege of meeting you at ERMI in 2021, and after learning more about you, you share a mantra and have shared a brand that resonates with so many women not only in insurance and construction, but really any woman at all. So can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you chose construction?
Sure. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I think the best way to describe it is construction chose me, kind of. I started out of college as a claims adjuster and did that for a couple of years. I was doing workers' compensation in my hometown of El Paso, Texas. Unfortunately, back in the day, they had one of the highest rates of injuries with the lowest success rate of return to work. And it was a bit frustrating. I had several hundred cases at a time, and it was just so frustrating to see that you couldn't really make a difference and you couldn't really help people. It was just helping them navigate a system, but we couldn't do anything to prevent it. So I went into manufacturing, and that's where I discovered my true calling, which is safety and risk management. And there, by just a fluke, I was very fortunate to be asked to become a safety professional. I didn't even know that that existed back in the day. We were stonewashing denim jeans, which is now back, right, if you go to the stores. And we had these large washing machines with pallets of rocks underneath them. And 3 or 4 employees had received really bad back injuries. And so I asked them what happened, asked for them to show me how they were removing the pallets of rocks from under the machines. And they were using heavy manual labor to get on their hands and knees and pull these pallets of rocks out. And I wondered why they were doing it that way. Well, come to discover that the pallet jacks were all broken. So I marched over to the maintenance department and asked them to fix the pallet jacks. A few weeks, and I solved the workers' comp back problem. And a few weeks later, a safety manager from our home office flew down and asked me if I wanted to be a safety director. But I was very fortunate that the safety professional that flew down and offered me that position was a true professional and was a CSP. They invested their time and effort in me, and it helped me develop into a new profession in a career that I absolutely love. So fast forward a few years later, I took some time off, got married, had children, did the taboo of leaving my career and my country for 5 years, and was told that I would never be able to pick up where I left off. And that was all limiting beliefs. And then when I came back 5 years later, Jordan Foster at the time was called CF Jordan. They needed a safety person and a risk management person. They didn't know they needed risk management, but I had already kind of worked my way into that. And just by serendipitously, right place, right time, and I was hired to create their safety and risk management process from scratch. They had grown very quickly. They had a lot of several hundred employees in the field, and they were trying to do the right thing, but it wasn't resonating in the field, and it wasn't giving them the results that they needed. So I kind of picked up where I left off after taking a 5-year hiatus and learned the construction industry too.
That's excellent, Tricia. And you mentioned that construction chose you, and you really developed this passion for safety. Do you think it was that tangible experience, getting on your hands and knees with the workers, understanding what they were doing and being in the field, that really drove you towards that? Because it sounds like you caught a bug, right? And now you took off with it and developed quite a career from that.
Absolutely. I really believe that we're doing ourselves a disservice if you don't take the time to understand the environment and the industry that you're in. And the best way to really understand that is to get out and see what you're building. And it doesn't really matter whether you're building widgets in a manufacturing plant or if you're doing construction on different projects. The more you can connect with the people, the most important people of all, those that are performing the work, and learn what their challenges are every day, that's how you become great at safety and risk management. And I would say business overall.
So, Tricia, construction historically is a male-dominated industry, and that's especially true when you get to the C-suite level. You described it as a lonely place, as being one of the only women in the room. Can you share with us a little bit more about how you climbed to success and how you earned that seat at the table?
Absolutely. I was very fortunate when I started working for CF Jordan at the time. I worked for some really good men. So they understood, and this was back in the day, there was not really virtually any women, especially in the field, in the construction industry, especially in El Paso, Texas, where I started. So very, very much stood out, felt very uncomfortable. But the way I solved that problem was just going out and meeting people and getting to know, asking them questions, and listening so that I could learn what their pain points were, what we could do to make a difference. That translated into having very good relationships with the executive president and the CEO. And they started looking to me as a trusted advisor. So I was able to kind of branch between those people working in the field. I spoke Spanish. I had developed good relationships with them. And then also being able to bring that knowledge to the C-suite and just saying, look, we think we're communicating about this, or we think this is a great idea, but it's really not serving, or it's not really executing the way we think it's going to be in the field. And I think that's how I was most successful. And I also was very smart to learn the language of money. So it's one thing to be passionate and care about people and wanting to make a difference. And the reality is that's very, very important. And we also need to understand the language of money. And so one of the B words in the book is called budgets, right? So not only for yourself, to empower yourself and to have true freedom, you have to understand finances, but in the workplace as well, you have to understand the financial impact that you have. And safety is one surefire way that the reality is the companies that get it, the job sites that understand it and embrace it, they're better at productivity, they're better at quality, they have less rework. So being able to bring that information and put it in the terms of the financial benefit an organization has. We have less turnover if we have people that are safe because they feel like they're a part of something bigger than themselves. And it can become a profit center as well. So I would say that's how I got their attention. It was being able to really tell what was going on in the field to the executive team and bring those messages directly to them. And then to be able to translate into, oh, and by the way, we've just saved $1 million because we don't have people out on workers' comp.
Yeah, no, Tricia, I mean, that's great. And we spoke last time, it wasn't always super easy. There was some struggles, some growing pains getting there. And I believe there was an example you had with a colleague, Marty, which was great. I was wondering if you could maybe share that story and some of the growing pains of going from a new professional to being that trusted advisor in the room.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started in construction, this was a long time ago. So, and it was really, people did not think I belonged there. And in fact, there was some rough spots where it felt like people just didn't expect me. And I looked different. I was a female entering their world. I had a minivan at the time that was quickly traded in for a four-wheel drive Suburban so that the safety lady didn't get stuck in the mud at a job site. But going back to how I was successful in manufacturing, I just started developing relationships. So I went out in the field, and I remember there was a gentleman by the name of Marty Bunn, and he was your typical stereotype of a superintendent, cigarette smoking, baseball cap kind of tough guy. And I remember driving up to his project, and he's like, the first thing he said, he comes out of the trailer and he says, "So are you here to shut me down or write me up?" And I said, "No, I'm actually here to see can you teach me how to build a bowling alley?" Because at the time they were building a bowling alley. And he kind of was taken aback. And he's like, "Yeah." I said, if you would just give me a chance, all I want to do is learn from you. And we walked the project, and he talked to me about the different subcontractor trades that we had on site, what they were doing, the challenges. I was able to give my advice on tying rebar and some of those things where people have repetitive motion issues. And from that moment that I could have been intimidated, nervous, or scared, and instead I was humble and hopefully developed a relationship with him by listening. We became very close over the years. Marty was my biggest supporter, and as his job became kind of the gold standard of how to do things, I was able to show through the lagging indicators and the leading indicators that he wasn't having incidents. He was on time and on budget. He wasn't having rework issues. And so being able to highlight that and have that relationship, the others that doubted me, I was able to say, well, but Marty's job is doing it and it seems to be working. And construction people are very competitive, so that seemed to work in my favor. And the next thing you know, it was just kind of slowly but surely they started to see that maybe there was something to this redheaded lady that was coming in and telling them to do things differently. Marty went on to be one of the biggest proponents. He was one of the first members and helped me start the first ever safety committee back in the day. And unfortunately, he was diagnosed with cancer. Right before he passed away, he drew a hard hat sticker for me, and it said "Stop," and it said "Always think safety." And we had them after he won our first ever Superintendent Safety Award, and we had hard hat stickers made for everyone in the company right before he passed away. So it was a wonderful relationship that never would have happened had I showed up just to write him up.
Mm-hmm. No, it's awesome hearing you talk about it. And, I feel like we all know Marty, right, as someone who maybe you have that experience. I think it's going to go one way, but then the relationship changes and becomes something really great and powerful. So with that, Tricia, it sounds like you really found this void in the communication. And really within that communication, there was a lot of power. There was a lot of process that could be repeated, that could be beneficial to the company, whether that's on the job site, in the trailer, or in the C-suite. So can you share a little bit about what you did and that safety committee to really draw out that power of communication and what Jordan Foster is doing now with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, it's been many years since then, and thank goodness safety, and especially the word safety, has taken on a new meaning in all industries, and it's been a little bit slower in construction, but we're getting there. And so it was really about overall worker well-being, and that's what you hear is the buzz now today about companies, that it's okay to show that you care about your people. And people, young and everyone in particular, but there's a lot of focus now on how to attract and retain new talent. Companies that don't get it, the companies that are always doing what they've always done as far as just this is the way it is, and it's a tough and rough and tumble world out there, and we're just going to treat people in a way where you're expected to work 1 million hours a week and never really have a family. That was really the way the industry was, and it has a bad reputation for it. And so what I've always done, and now it seems to be in fashion, is to think about things a little bit differently. And how do you want to be treated? And are you a bigger part of something else? Why would you stay at our company when you could make a few dollars more down the road at another company? And a lot of that has to do with the culture of the organization and feeling like you're a part of something bigger than yourself. And so what I'm excited about now, 20 years later, is that this is now all abuzz, and this is what the industry of safety is latching onto with all these different leadership programs and human performance and mental well-being. That's really where we're headed. I think maybe I was just a little bit ahead of the game back in the day.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it, and it's now in fashion. And so I know you had mentioned to us Leaders Without a Title.
Yes.
And that was a program that you helped initiate for the company. And I thought it was brilliant because we all definitely can resonate with the teacher or whoever, the instructor, gives out an assignment. And we all know, we've all been in those rooms, and you either look at someone, say, oh, hey, what did that person just say? And you know exactly who you want to talk to, or maybe you're that person. So with that program you created, what does that look like for Jordan Foster, and how does that come to be, and what's it doing now?
So basically, it's called our Field Safety Leader Program, and it's been so successful that this year we're launching our Catalyst program, which is phase 2. But basically, what we've done is we've gone out and identified the leaders without a title. So after a toolbox meeting, invariably there's one person that everyone goes to. When the superintendent gets back in their truck, that person is the one that our associates go to and say, so what did he say we're doing today? And whether it could be that they speak English and Spanish, they could be bilingual, it could be they just have that connector type personality where they're a trusted person and people gravitate towards them. We went out and intentionally identified who those leaders without a title were. And then we asked them to be a part of our field safety leader process. And so what that is typically we do a great job, our industry, of providing safety training. But then a person that is maybe the best equipment operator that we have, at some point they get promoted to be the supervisor over the equipment operators, and they don't have the skill set to be a great leader. How do you become a leader worth following? And how do you become a trusted advisor for those that you are expected to work for you? And so we've been very intentional about doing that. So every month we have a group of people that meet, and they've been vetted. We did interviews, and we asked them to commit to the time and effort to do this program. And in addition to safety training, so of course they all get all of the safety training that's so important to the construction industry in small bits of information, but then they also get the leadership side of it. We're using a platform called Giant TV or Giant Worldwide as our platform, and we educate people on what is it like to be on the other side of you? What is your tendencies in how you communicate? Is there a different way that you can communicate with a person? And then there's different personality profiles as well. So if you're on the other side of someone who has a completely different personality than you, is there a better way that you can communicate with that person so that you become a leader worth following? It's been so successful that we are now in phase 2. So the first class graduated. Several of them have gone on to become foremen and superintendents as well within the organization. And then we're taking that group and we have a catalyst group. And that's where we're actually doing more hands-on practice of communication skills, conflict resolution skills, and being more intentional about how do you multiply good leadership skills. So our goal is that it's going to permeate the entire organization over time. And it's been really getting some great traction, and it's been probably one of the most rewarding things I've done in my career.
Yeah, rightfully so. I mean, you're impacting the lives of people today, but also those same people tomorrow, right? You're helping them grow in their careers. You're stressing the importance of communication. I really love hearing about that. And we'll have to have you on for season 3 to give us a follow-up how the Catalyst program is going.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So talking about communication and tying that back to risk, right? What were some of the risks that you saw that can be mitigated through enhanced communication on the job sites?
Well, I think one of the challenges, especially at the C-suite level and the executive level, is everyone is trying to do the right thing. So we have these great ideas, and we think, oh, we'll just implement this process or procedure or program, and then we go out and we send an email or spend a little bit of time on it, and then we expect people to change their behavior or to change something about how we manage our process. And unfortunately, if things were only that easy, but they're not. So part of the challenge in the C-suite is, what are the risks to begin with, and are they hidden? Because if you don't know them, that they're there, you can't fix them. So a simple example is, we do general contracting and civil work, and we had an issue with line strikes across all of our divisions. And of course, they weren't costing a lot of money. They were kind of this under the radar problem. But until you trend it, until you identify it, and then you realize that it's not just happening in one division, it's happening across all the divisions, what do you do about it? So that to me is a risk. That's a very simple, very tangible example of a risk that needs to be mitigated. But what do you do about it? Well, if you don't know it's there, you won't do anything about it. Similarly, things that are a little bit more complicated is, how do we, again, attract and retain a workforce in this environment that we're in today? Again, construction has a very bad reputation for being a dirty, kind of good old boy network industry where you give your life to the company and you get nothing in return. Unfortunately, that's why a lot of people don't go to the construction industry. But the reality is, it's a wonderful industry. It can create a lot of opportunities for families, for people that really want to grow and excel. And it is changing. But if the C-suite is made up of people that all have a similar experience and a similar background, and have all gotten to the C-suite through those really rough, I'm going to do this at all costs kind of tendency, that bro code kind of world, do they even know that it's a hidden risk, that they're not going to be able to attract and keep their future workforce? Because the reality is, the future workforce wants something different now. So that's another hidden risk. And I think it's part of what I've been successful at, is being able to look at things in a different way, and maybe having conversations in the C-suite that we never would have had if I wasn't sitting there. Like things like, let's have a conversation about burnout. Let's have a conversation about mental well-being in the workplace, and why is the construction industry still one industry with the highest rate of suicide in the United States, according to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. If those conversations aren't being had, it may not be intentional. It may be you don't have someone in the room asking different questions.
Yeah, that's so enlightening and empowering. We'll definitely have to dial deeper into that and hear more about the bro code. Pivoting slightly, just a little bit, today's episode is focusing on women in leadership. And you've recognized the importance of communication. In fact, you've written this phenomenal book. For anybody who hasn't had a chance to read it, we'll be posting a link on the podcast where you can purchase this fantastic book. The B words, the 13 words that every woman must navigate for success. I'm just going to read something. It's a quote about the book. So this book fights for true equality in the workforce and calls for bridges to be built not only between women, but between men and women as well, fostering open communication and understanding that will lead to a brighter future. So can you share with our listeners the B words, what some of them are, and what are the stigmas that are associated with them?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. It's been a labor of love, and I've had the best time not only writing it, but also the best part of it is meeting women like you and other women that have reached out and said, this has helped me in some way. And so that was really my goal, and my intention of putting it out there was, if someone can learn something from my experience and I'm able to share that and make it a little bit easier for someone else, or give someone an idea of a different way of thinking about things, then that's really what I want to be doing at this point in my career. So the B words, it started with the original title I had thought about was From Babe to Bitch, right? So it's like you get to a point when you start out, you're kind of wide-eyed and trying to figure it out, and people are like, what is she doing here? But yeah, I'll talk to her. And then after a while, I became very intentional about being an expert in my field and understanding what it takes to be successful, whether it be related to safety or risk management or bottom line profit. But that came at a price, because all of a sudden I was questioning things and people weren't necessarily sure that they wanted me questioning those things. And so sometimes it could be very uncomfortable. And so that led to being called a bitch sometimes. But then I realized as going through the writing process that I had so much more to say. So I came up with the idea of the B words. The first chapter is on self-defined success. So my success should not look like yours, Valerie, or yours, Mike. Every single one of us should, when you're looking over your shoulder at what others are doing and thinking that that's for you, that just creates unhappiness and distress. So I say, let's all just look at our own self-defined success. But that goes back to getting to know yourself, because if you don't know yourself, you have no idea what you want. So that's the only one that's not a B word. And then it goes into beliefs, limiting beliefs. What is society telling us as females that we can't do? And what are we telling ourselves? So there's inhibition, is the story we tell ourselves that we repeat over and over. And then prohibition is, what is society telling us, whether it be your family, your friends, your tradition, or the wider culture of the world. Like why women don't belong in construction is something that I heard over and over. I heard women don't belong in safety either. Well, I heard that you can't quit your job and take time off and then come back. And I've proven that, yes, you can do all of those things. Balance is important, and whether or not you can achieve it as a woman. I think we're always trying to achieve that perfect nirvana, and it doesn't really exist. Babes is when you're young, some of the things that you can go through as a young person and give you advice. I talk about bias, bullies. One of my favorite chapters is Bridges, because Bridges is about how men and women can support one another to make lasting change in the future. So like I mentioned, I wouldn't be where I am today if there weren't some really good men that had opened the door for me and given me a chance. It's given me a slight window for me to enter. If that had not happened, I would not have the career I've had today. I wouldn't be here talking to you today. So when I started writing this, probably about a year after Me Too came out, and everything was so polarized. It was full of anger and hatred and just this very divisive conversations in the media. And I thought, I want to be very intentional about writing a book that identifies problems and addresses uncomfortable things, but then what is the solution? How can we move forward? And the chapter on bridges is exactly that. How do we build bridges? How do men and women work together to make change? Because if 50% of the population is not working towards change, nothing's going to ever change. So.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I love how you set the book up. It's similar to that Bridges chapter, right? Every word, there's a problem identified and then an action item that follows. Mm-hmm. And that resonates with so many women. Men can relate too, right? This isn't just a book for women, it's a book for everyone. I love that you talk about and you compare navigating the workforce to being similar to a minefield. You step too far down one direction and then suddenly you're bossy. But if you go down this path, then you're overbearing and difficult to work with, right? There's all these stigmas. So how do you navigate that minefield? And what advice can you give to our listeners to balance walking that fine line?
So my advice is, so first of all, like I said, I was the only one. So I had nobody to ask. I was just trying to figure this out on my own. Some things were really, really painful. I had wished that I had someone that I could have called and said, what do you do when this happens? And I didn't. So part of my book and my journey is being that person for the next generation. That's really important to me, is no one is alone on an island and we can learn from one another. I do think that exactly, sometimes if you are too strong in your conviction, you can really aggravate some people and then you lose your voice because they shut you down, right? And so I think I've gotten better at things as I've gotten older. One little piece of advice that I give everyone is to, whether man, women, anybody, is before you react, is to give yourself 24 hours to think about what your reaction is. Because at the time that you're in the situation, whether it be an email, whether it be a conversation, whether it be in a very intense negotiation, if you are in an emotional state, adrenaline's taking over and you may say or do something that you're going to regret. So if you can remove yourself from the situation and give yourself some time to process, then you don't do stuff that you can't take back. So to me, that's very, very valuable. I also encourage any young woman in a non-traditional industry like engineering, STEM, construction, safety, risk management, even trying to climb the corporate ladder, reach out for and look for people that you can form a network with. One of the chapters is bonds. Men do a very good job of creating intentional relationships where they see themselves moving forward and they actively seek out someone that maybe is doing something at the next level that they do. Women tend to stay with networking within people that are doing similar work that they're doing, or quite frankly, commiserating with them at the same level. And so I say steal a page from the men's playbook when it comes to networking. Don't be afraid to ask someone that's doing what you think you might want to do to go to coffee and interview them. Don't be afraid to reach out. We have LinkedIn now. We have all of this social media that didn't exist when I was coming up. So utilize that to the best of your abilities. And the worst thing somebody can tell you is no. That's it.
Yeah, it prevents what could become an echo chamber, right, of speaking with people doing the same role at the same time. And, you reference that as well within the C-suite, right? If the C-suite is lacking in diversity, sometimes you can unintentionally find yourself in an echo chamber, right? Not asking new questions, attacking the problems the same way you've always have, which lead to the same issues that you've always come up with as well. So can you share with our listeners maybe what are some of those unintended consequences that happen if you're stuck in that echo chamber? Why do we need to break that mold?
Actually, I think in the Bridges chapter, I tell a story that's really about that exact thing. So the reality is only 1% of women are in the C-suite in the construction industry in the United States. Only 1%. Only 10% of construction employees are women. And so we do definitely have, right or wrong or indifferent, it's an industry where men have really been the ones in the C-suite. So they're the ones making the decisions. They're the ones that have the power to make those decisions. And in that echo chamber, we can be having similar conversations and completely missing the risks of what's going on in the real world. So, for example, today, whether we like it or not, this pandemic has shifted what work looks like. Even just being able to do this interview on Zoom, the world is completely different than it was maybe 2.5, 3 years ago. So the C-suite, if everyone is sitting at the table and saying the same things because they're of similar background and similar experiences, you're missing out on what's really going on with your customer base, with your trade partners, with those that will make you be successful in the future. And I would anticipate that at some point, those companies that don't change will become obsolete. Kind of like the Blockbuster, remember? I remember Blockbuster.
I do.
You probably don't, but but you got to change and you got to ebb and flow. And part of change is having the courage to have people that don't look like you and maybe don't think like you and don't have similar life experiences sitting around the table talking about the challenges and making the decisions.
Mm-hmm. Well, Tricia, I think that sets us up beautifully for our next question here. But just how do we fight against that, right? What are some takeaways? What are maybe 3 things that you could do to avoid this situation?
I think it requires, if we're speaking about how do you change the dynamic and the traditional path to the C-suite, it requires intentionality. So to me, it's on 2 levels. The decision makers need to be looking and intentionally seeking out diversity, or they're going to be in the echo chamber, right? At the same time, we need to be able to create that pipeline of future leaders as well. So it's things like our field safety leader program, our catalyst program. It's women reading the B words and addressing their limiting beliefs related to are they really prohibited from doing and what are they inhibiting themselves from doing? because of some limiting belief. If someone wants to be a CEO or in a C-suite or a vice president, but they believe because they have a child they can't do it, that's a limiting belief that they need to sit with and figure out, how am I going to get past that? So I think we need to work on it from both ends. And it's not easy. Changing culture and talking about soft skills and communication, those are hard things to do. But if we don't do it, at some point, other companies that are out there doing it are going to succeed, and the other ones are going to be left behind. Make a difference in your little corner of the world. So my mom would always, and my grandmother would always say that to me, like, how do you change the world? I mean, we are going through so many different things right now, and it can be daunting every day that we get up and try to do things, but it's how you show up in the world that makes a difference, and what can you do in your little corner of it, whether it be in the insurance business, construction, how you treat other people makes a difference, and that's how you change the world.
Tricia, those are really great takeaways and also a really powerful action item for our listeners to explore those limiting beliefs, right? It's that voice in our head that's telling us, you can't do that, or you don't belong here. And you talk about that in the book. So another great reason why the listeners out there should, in fact, listen to this book, because it talks about exactly what you just mentioned. So what would be something that our listeners would be surprised to hear about you, right? You're in construction, you're in safety, you have such a dynamic background. What would our listeners be surprised to hear?
I would say there's two things. So I mentioned that I kind of took 5 years off. I actually married a man from Germany that was in the German Air Force that I met in El Paso, Texas, at Denim and Diamonds on 10-cent beer night. And moved. I gave up my career, my house, my car, and I moved to Germany, and I lived in the Munich area for 5 years, which was a very interesting and rewarding experience. And then came back and took up where I left off. Another interesting little tidbit that people don't know about me is I love animals. I love dogs. I've had many pets over the years. And when I was young, I would save them a lot. They would gravitate towards me. And so I would find them in the streets. I would find them on the highway. I would stop and be the one that pulled over and rescued them. I would name them. And then my mom and I would post an ad in the newspaper in the Lost and Found. And invariably, I named them their real name when the owners would call. So my mom would call me Dr. Doolittle.
Oh, that's excellent. That's excellent. Quite a hidden skill too, right? You just have a knack for it.
I would just love them so much. I was always hoping that, so I would just connect with them. I don't know. It was just kind of weird.
Well, Tricia, we've really enjoyed having you on the show today. It's been really great to talk with you. And as you know, we are starting to wrap this up, and we want to take a bite out of women in leadership. So with that in mind, we do have a few quick rapid-fire questions for you, if you're ready.
Sure, absolutely.
All right, so I've got the first one for you. What do you think is the most significant barrier to female leadership?
Limiting beliefs. I believe that from both ends, from men in leadership positions thinking women can't do it for one reason or the other, and for women themselves exploring and really diving into what are they believing that's no longer serving them.
What gets you the most excited about work today?
What I'm most excited about at work is the opportunity. So our industry is changing, whether it be on the risk management side, the construction side. I'm excited about the fact that we're finally at a place in our industry where we're talking about diversity and inclusion, and we're talking about how to make a difference in people's lives and create career paths where people don't have to sacrifice having a family to have a job or a profession. And so that makes me pretty excited.
So you're in a risk management role, right? What's the greatest risk you've taken as a professional?
So the biggest risk I've ever taken is at the height of my career, when I was probably 30 years old, was giving everything up and to get married and to move to a foreign country with my husband. And the second side of that, probably the second biggest risk, is convincing my husband to move back to the United States with me and hoping that all worked out. And so far, so good, 26 years in, and we're still going strong.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, Tricia, as we begin to wrap this up, the podcast is called The Building Bite. That's BIM insurance technology with the experts. You are our expert. So we always ask our guests, what are you taking a bite out of today?
Today, I am taking a bite out of one of my favorite restaurants here in Dallas called Neighborhood Services, and I'm going to have a meatball. They have the best darn meatballs as an appetizer, and I'm really looking forward to it. Go in there tonight with my daughter.
That sounds excellent.
That sounds excellent and delicious. Tricia, thank you so much for chatting with us today. If our listeners want to hook up with you, where can they find you?
You can find me at TriciaKagerer.com. I have a website. You can also find me on Instagram or Facebook, on LinkedIn at Tricia Kagerer. And my email is Tricia@TriciaKagerer.com.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Building Bite. This podcast has been brought to you by Proactive. Check us out on thebuildingbite.com, where you can subscribe to our newsletter and follow us on social media for all future The Building Bite news and updates. You can also find us on your favorite apps, including Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, and Amazon. If you have ideas for episode topics that we should cover on the show, or you know somebody who would be a perfect guest, let us know at connect@thebuildingbite.com.